The young waitress accidentally spilled an entire cup of hot tea all over the CEO's custom-made suit. The restaurant went completely silent. A manager screamed, "Security!" Customers immediately stood up. Some even took out their phones to record. The waitress turned pale. She knew her life was over. Then, the CEO did something that nobody expected. He smiled. Not a fake smile. Not an angry smile. A warm, genuine smile. And quietly said, "I've been looking for you for 15 years. Every person in the restaurant froze, including the waitress. My name is Daniel Brooks. At 42, I own one of the largest hotel chains in New York. People thought my life was perfect. Luxury penthouses, private jets, business magazines. But every success reminded me of one failure. 15 years earlier, I had lost the only woman I'd ever truly loved. Her name was Emily. One day, she simply disappeared. No goodbye. No explanation. I searched for years. Private investigators. Old friends. Social media. Nothing. It was as if she'd vanished from the earth. Eventually, I stopped searching. Or at least, I pretended to. That Tuesday afternoon, I wasn't even supposed to be at that restaurant. My driver took a wrong turn because of road construction. I looked outside. A small family-owned cafe. Nothing special. "I'll eat here." My assistant looked surprised. "Sir, there are better places." I smiled. I'm tired of expensive restaurants. The cafe was crowded. Families, students, an elderly couple sharing dessert. It felt peaceful. I ordered a simple cup of hot tea while waiting for lunch. A few minutes later, a young waitress walked toward my table. She couldn't have been older than 24. She looked nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she carried the tray. Then, someone bumped into her from behind. The tray slipped. Time slowed. The boiling tea poured directly onto my jacket. The cup shattered across the floor. The entire cafe gasped. The waitress's face turned white. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Before she could finish, the restaurant manager rushed over. "You idiot. Do you know who this is?" He grabbed the young woman's arm. "You're fired." She didn't defend herself. She simply lowered her head. "I'm sorry. It was my fault." I slowly stood up. Hot tea dripped from my jacket. Everyone waited for me to explode. Instead, I stared at the waitress. Something about her eyes felt strangely familiar. Then, I noticed the silver necklace around her neck. My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a necklace. It was the tiny pendant hanging from it. A small silver compass. I knew that pendant because 15 years ago, I bought the exact same one for the woman I never stopped loving. I looked at the waitress, then quietly asked, "Where did you get that necklace?" She instinctively grabbed it. "My mother gave it to me." My heartbeat doubled. I whispered, "What is your mother's name?" The young woman looked confused, then answered, "Emily." I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I forgot about the hot tea. I forgot about my ruined suit. I forgot about everyone staring at us. There was only one thing on my mind. Emily. The waitress looked at me nervously. "Sir, is something wrong?" I pointed at the silver compass around her neck. "You said your mother gave you that?" She nodded. "Yes. She told me never to take it off." My hand started shaking. 15 years ago, I'd bought 2 identical compass necklaces. One for me, one for Emily. She used to laugh and say, "Now we'll never lose each other." I swallowed hard. "How old are you?" She looked confused. "I'm 24. 24. The numbers matched perfectly. I looked into her eyes again. The same hazel eyes. The same smile. Even a tiny dimple on her left cheek was exactly like Emily's. The restaurant manager suddenly interrupted. "Sir, I'm terribly sorry. I'll fire her immediately." He turned toward the waitress. "Olivia, go clean out your locker. You don't work here anymore." The young woman lowered her head. "I understand." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply untied her apron. Something about that broke my heart. "Stop." The manager froze. I looked directly at him. "Nobody's getting fired." He blinked. "But sir, she ruined your suit." I smiled. "It's only a suit." The entire restaurant went silent. The manager couldn't believe what he'd heard. Neither could Olivia. She looked at me. "You're not angry?" I shook my head. "No, it was an accident." Tears instantly filled her eyes. She whispered, "Thank you." Then, I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. Does her mother still have this necklace's twin? Olivia frowned. How do you know there are two? My heart skipped a beat. Because I bought them. She stared at me. For several seconds, she couldn't say a word. Finally, she whispered, "That's impossible. My mom said the man who gave her the other necklace disappeared before I was born." The restaurant suddenly felt too small. I couldn't breathe. Before I could ask another question, Olivia's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and immediately looked terrified. "It's my mom." She answered quickly. "Mom." A weak voice came through the speaker. "Olivia, I'm not feeling well. I think I need to go to the hospital." Olivia's face turned completely white. She grabbed her bag. "I'm coming." She turned to leave, but suddenly stopped, and she looked back at me. For the first time, there was fear in her eyes. "Sir, if my mother sees you, everything will change." For a second, I just stood there. Everything will change? What did she mean? Olivia was already rushing toward the exit. Without thinking, I grabbed my car keys. "Wait, I'll drive you." She hesitated. "You don't have to." "I'm not asking." 10 minutes later, we were speeding through downtown Manhattan. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than the traffic. Finally, I looked at her. "Tell me the truth. Is your mother Emily Carter?" Olivia slowly nodded. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "So it really is her." She looked out the window. "My mom never talks about you. But every year, on October 17th, she cries." That date hit me like lightning. October 17th, the day Emily disappeared. I whispered, "She remembers." Olivia looked at me. She never forgot. My heartbeat became louder. "Then why did she leave?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't know. Every time I ask, she says the same thing. Some goodbyes aren't a choice." Those words echoed inside my head. Not a choice. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my assistant. "Mr. Brooks, the board meeting starts in 15 minutes. I looked ahead. "I'm not coming." There was complete silence. "Sir, the investors flew in from London." "I know. They can wait." I ended the call. Olivia stared at me. "You just canceled a billion-dollar meeting?" "For my mom." I smiled faintly. "I've waited 15 years. I can lose one meeting." A few minutes later, we arrived at St. Mary's Hospital. Olivia jumped out before the car had fully stopped. I followed her inside. She ran straight toward room 214. But just as she reached the door, she suddenly stopped. Her hand froze on the handle. She looked back at me. "Please, if she tells you to leave, don't hate her." I nodded. "I won't." She slowly opened the door. The room was quiet. Machines beeped softly. A woman lay sleeping by the window. Her hair was streaked with gray now. Her face looked older, tired, but I'd recognize her anywhere. Emily. 15 years disappeared in a single heartbeat. I couldn't move. Olivia quietly whispered, "Mom, there's someone here." Emily slowly opened her eyes. She looked toward the door. The moment she saw me, the color drained from her face. Tears instantly filled her eyes. Her lips trembled. She whispered only one word. "Daniel." I took one step forward. "Emily." For 15 years, I'd imagined this moment. I'd imagined yelling, demanding answers, asking why she left. Instead, the only thing I could say was, "I thought you were gone." Emily began crying. "So did I." I frowned. "What does that mean?" She closed her eyes, then whispered the sentence. "That changed everything. They told me, you died." The room fell completely silent. I stared at Emily. "They told you I died." She nodded slowly. Tears streamed down her face. "I attended your funeral." Every hair on my arm stood up. "My funeral?" Emily reached into the drawer beside her hospital bed. Her hands were trembling. She pulled out an old newspaper. The paper had turned yellow with age. She handed it to me. I looked down. My own face was printed on the front page. "Young businessman killed in highway crash." My heart stopped. I whispered, This never happened." Emily nodded. "I know that now. But 15 years ago, I believed every word." I looked closer. The article had my photo, my name, even my age, but the details were wrong. The accident happened in another state. I had never even been there. I looked back at Emily. Who gave you this? She closed her eyes. My father. The room became silent again. I remembered her father. Richard Lawson, a wealthy businessman. The man who hated me. He believed I wasn't good enough for his daughter. Emily wiped away another tear. He came to my apartment. He told me you died on your way to see me. He even showed me this newspaper. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He said, Daniel loved you until his last breath. Now it's time for you to move on. I clenched my fists. So you believed him? She nodded. I was 24. I had no reason to think my own father would lie. I slowly sat down beside her bed. I searched for you. For years. I hired investigators. I even went to your parents' house. Emily looked shocked. My parents told me. You left the country. I laughed bitterly. They told me. You married another man. Emily shook her head immediately. I never got married. I frowned. But Olivia... She smiled through her tears. I adopted her. I looked toward Olivia. She nodded. I was 5. My parents died in a car accident. My mom adopted me. She always said, family is chosen with love. Everything suddenly made sense. The necklace, the resemblance, the kindness. Emily wasn't Olivia's biological mother, but she loved her as if she were. Just then, the hospital room door slowly opened. A nurse stepped inside. Mrs. Lawson, there's someone downstairs asking for you. Emily frowned. Who? The nurse hesitated, then quietly answered. Richard Lawson. The room froze. Emily's face turned completely white. She whispered, My father. He's still alive. I stared at her in disbelief. You told me he died. Emily looked terrified. That's what my mother told me. The nurse nodded. He insists on seeing both of you. I slowly stood up. For 15 years, I'd searched for answers. Now, the one man who knew the truth was waiting downstairs. I didn't wait another second. I walked out of the hospital room and headed straight for the elevator. Emily grabbed my arm. Daniel, please don't hate him. I looked at her. For 15 years, I hated myself. I don't have room left to hate anyone else. The elevator doors opened. An elderly man stood in the lobby. His hair was completely white now. His shoulders had sunk with age. For the first time, Richard Lawson didn't look powerful. He looked broken. The moment he saw me, he slowly stood up. I never thought I'd see you again. I looked him straight in the eyes. You made sure of that. He lowered his head. You're right. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out an old envelope. I've carried this for 15 years. He handed it to me. It was addressed in Emily's handwriting. Daniel. I looked at him. What is this? He whispered. The letter she wrote to you. I never mailed it. My hand started shaking. I opened it immediately. Inside, Emily had written, Daniel, if you're reading this, it means my father finally did the right thing. I never left because I stopped loving you. I left because he told me your life was in danger if I stayed. I believed him. If we never meet again, please remember, you were the greatest love of my life. The words became blurry. I realized my tears had fallen onto the paper. I looked back at Richard. Why? He couldn't hold back his tears anymore. Because I was selfish. I wanted my daughter to marry someone rich. I thought I was protecting her future. But all I did was destroy both of your lives. Emily slowly walked toward her father. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, she hugged him. Not because he deserved it, but because she didn't want to spend another 15 years carrying hate. Richard broke down crying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at Emily. She smiled through her tears. My mom used to say, forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It frees your future. 3 months later, Emily was healthy again. Olivia had started college, and the small cafe where we first met had completely changed. Not because I bought it, because Emily wanted to keep it exactly the way it was. Every Friday afternoon, I leave my office early, sit at the same little table, and order 1 cup of hot tea. Every single time, Emily would walk over, smile, and jokingly ask, Careful, I might spill it again. I'd laugh. I hope you do, because if she hadn't spilled that cup of tea, I would have walked out of that cafe without ever finding the love I'd been searching for 15 years. Sometimes, the biggest accidents turned out to be God's greatest miracles.